Welcome in, everybody.
Hi! Hello? Sugar Rush, what's going on? Hello? Sup, nerds? Flapsack Nickeljack. T. Schmidt, what's going on? Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. How are we doing? What is today? Wednesday? Welcome back to a Wednesday. Hump day. Ghost Hunter, what's going on? How is everybody doing? Hope you're having a wonderful day. Hey, yo, Big Bob. Wad, what's happening? Source, good to see you. Hello. Welcome back. Rattlecan. T. Howard. Hello. In YouTube's lands. Hello. Bump, bump, bomb. The fam's all here. Getting going on a Wednesday. I'll be painting some more non-metallic gold. Chris just ran to fill my water glass up. I just got back into the office from a long lunch meeting with an out-of-town business partner. And traffic here is, I don't know if traffic is abysmal where you people live as it is here, but for some reason over the past 2 weeks since the new year, traffic in Arizona has just, I don't know what's wrong with it. It's crazy. Big Bob, you have flying cars. What? We have Waymo. Do you know Waymo? You know what this is? The driverless cars? We're like the test center for Waymo. Some government politician in Phoenix was desperate for Waymo tax dollars or something, so they allow these stupid driverless cars here. Chicago traffic is legendary, like just right now or always. Thank you, sir. Yep. You're my hero. Like, is it always that way? Because I feel like, Chris, do you feel like since in the last 2 weeks, we talked about this, like in the last 2 weeks, traffic has just, like something's gone wrong.
Well, it's everybody's here for the open.
Oh, that's right. We got the Waste Management Open. We got a bunch of stuff from out of town and all of the snowbirds.
Yep, and
I always forget that.
All that stuff.
Okay.
Our January to mid-February
is always a crap
busy.
Show. Yeah, because we have so many people in from out of town, the snowbirds we call them, because our weather is so much better here than the rest of the world during the winter. So we have a lot of out-of-towners here, you can tell, because all their license plates are from Canada or the Dakotas. Nothing worse than the Walmart cleaners stopping and not moving. It's the same thing. Yep. You live in Bama. Traffic is bad even in smaller cities. Yeah, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. Law Dog, what's going on?
General Ginkgo resub 10 months.
What? Not possible.
Sub for 13. Welcome.
Not possible. That General Ginkgo guy, I don't know about that.
We love you, General Ginkgo. And you take great
We're
photos.
sending such mixed messages. I'm like, I don't know about that guy. And you're like, love that guy.
I don't know about that guy. Great guy.
We cover all the bases. In court, will not be wrong. They'll be like, well, we heard you loved him, but we also don't trust the guy. Just watch this film. Yeah, traffic's just been horrible.
Yes, it's
our new production facility is only 5 miles away, which by any reasonable estimate would be, let's say in traffic, 10 minutes. Right? 10, 15 minutes tops to go 5 miles. Incorrect.
Yeah.
Incorrect.
Towards the end of February, it gets a little bit nicer, which is good. But yeah, we're just in that season right now.
It's nuts. We're doing great, Colonel. Thank you for asking. Big Bob says never trust a liar. Well, wait a minute. Ginkgo says, fair enough. I am me. I am also me. So how is that possible? If I'm me and you're me,
then who are they?
Who's right? We can't both be me. So I find like one of us is lying. One of us is the true me, and the other one lying. This is me. Today is me too. Big Bob says he's me. Ginkgo says we are one. Hive mind.
There it is.
Hive mind proven on stream.
Oh, Jason, question from Sugar Rush. Any chance you're painting any of those new Gundam minis? Ugh, they're so popular right now. I feel like either love them or you don't like them as much.
So I'm going to get some grief for this one. I'm not a big Gundam fan.
Are you like of the IP or of the models? Kind of the.
So there are some good Gundam shows, right? I'll be honest. Like I forget what it is, Unicorn or Gundam 00, whatever it is. I don't remember the names that they use. There are some really great Gundam series, movies, that kind of stuff. So some of that I really enjoy. By and large, though, I'm not a fan of the wacky freaking robots.
Oh yeah, like the I don't want to say the
It's too
realism,
out of control. It's too many bajillion spiky bit things everywhere. It's just crazy. So the style doesn't really appeal to me as much as I wish it did, because I really do love giant stompy robots, and the whole idea of Gundam gels with me, makes sense. I love it. There was a thing I just watched. Was it on Netflix? This new one that was told from the perspective of some of the what I would consider to be the bad guys all the time, but I guess they're not technically. I don't know all the storyline info. The Zaku people, right? The people that were in Zaku's. And I thought that was really good. The animation was pretty good. The storyline was okay. I enjoyed that a lot. But this is my long-winded way of saying that I don't know that I'll paint any of them because I don't really care.
Yeah.
The bigger Gundams, believe it or not, some of those are cool, and I've done dioramas and stuff. We did a gosh, I don't even remember which one it was, the damaged unicorn or something like that.
I am not sure.
I'm not sure either. I don't know. I can't profess to know a whole lot about the storyline or any of that stuff, but I have a ground type and another Zaku that somebody sent me back in the day, which was really cool. So there's stuff I like about it, but it's just not one of my faves.
If you guys are just tuning in, we are picking up with the non-metallic gold trim on this guy. We did the shoulder mostly yesterday, and we're going to be working on the rest of the trim here.
Yeah.
Jason, what's the focus for you today?
Touch the model with the brush.
Touch the model with the brush with pale yellow.
Bright pale yellow is what I'm using right now. I am touching my model with the brush.
From 1,000-foot level, what are you doing today in general?
It's the same thing that we left off with yesterday, which is, initially on each of these pieces, we focused on the shoulder yesterday for quite a while, going in and dialing in with the bright yellow ochre, which was the more yellow of the two bright colors. The bright yellow ochre, dialing in where I knew I wanted my highlights to go, where my reflection spots would go, and then coming back with the bright pale yellow that I'm using now as our white, so to speak, and that's the brightest reflection spots. And so now what I'm doing is I'm putting those bright reflections on here, and what I'll be trying to figure out is how bright do I want the metal to look, because I have not really gone to the full intensity of bright pale yellow in too many places, and so I'll continue to use it in a less diluted fashion as I go around the model to find out, what brightness I'm really liking.
Nice. Can you come down just a touch there? Perfect.
So that's a lot of what we're doing. It's still, I say sort of exploratory. We still have brighter colors that we can use here. We can go to bright ivory and then to titanium white finally to get the brightness that we want. But a lot of it I can still get going just by getting this bright pale yellow dialed up a little bit.
And then it's just about picking certain edges and such?
Yeah, it's like finding those spots like right there where I hit it, right? Just in a couple little spots, making it a little bit brighter. And a lot of that is just, like I said, feeling it out. Trying to figure out, okay, what looks good in this spot? Where can I stand to pump up the brightness a little bit more? Like right here at the corner of this eyebrow shape. To just build up a little bit more contrast.
Nice.
And I'll work on the whole model. But, yesterday when we left off, I was kind of glazing this top area. And in order to not overwork it, I then started working on the other shoulder. Mm-hmm. So now I want to come back and go with almost an undiluted version of the bright pale yellow right here where my brightest shine should be.
Mm-hmm.
I built up the bright shine on the trim piece here, but we didn't ever set it into the main shoulder plate. So I'll do that now. And I just want to take very light brush strokes, move them in towards the center, just repeating what we've always been doing along here, except now with a much less diluted color, so that it builds up a lot more brightness around this midpoint. And then feather it out with very light brush marks out towards the side. It's like barely touching the model with the paint so that I can control it and just build up that bright spot and keep it in line. And then I'll just keep building that how I like it. I like these other little secondary shines that I've created on the trim, the raised trim there. So I've got like this shine spot right here and one down lower that could be reflecting from like the knuckles, right, and the hand. And so that would carry over into this spot here as well. So I'll put a little brightness carried over into this and maybe catch that line there with it.
Nice. Smooth. Now I'm really starting to see that shine.
Right.
Now that's even just with that little stroke there, you can kind of really even define the light even more.
Right. And then even down here where I've got that gold, I can do just a little bit of, there's like another one of those rivets right there too. Grab the top of that rivet and then I can kind of just add in a little bit more brightness that comes out to this line here. And a little bit on this edge here maybe.
The deets and doots of non-metallic gold.
Yes, it is all about the deets and doots at this point.
Wow. Mechna Z Dimposter? Oh, wow, 165 stream streak. Sorry,
What?
I couldn't see that for a second there. Wow.
That's crazy dedication. Thank you so much.
That's awesome. We're all just tuning in. We're painting some more non-metallic gold. Welcome in, everybody. We are continuing on Anthony El Tigre. We've been working on him since last week. Last week we did the black armor and started on Friday the gold here. And the rest is history. Now we're doing the deets and the dudes.
Finding those brightest spots and then kind of tailoring them to the story we're trying to tell. How bright do I want to go? How far do I want to extend these reflections? The farther they go, the more intense the light is imagined to be, so the brighter it has to be. So you wind up in, the more paint you put down, the brighter it has to show with these colors. So I gotta make sure I kind of control it to the way I want so it doesn't get too bright, because it can get really bright really fast. This is the stage where the non-metallic really starts to show itself. Like Chris just said, you really start to see the shine. And that's the part where the brain starts to really get that dopamine shot, because you're like, oh yeah, this is working. And you got to be careful with that, right? Because you can overdo it. Once you find a thing you like, you if you're like me, right, you can overdo it. You can make that thing like, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy 100 of those. It's like, well, what are you really gonna do with 100 of those? What are you really gonna do if you put way too much brightness on this model and it overtakes it and makes it not feel right anymore?
So are you at the point now to where it's like, okay, now on the specifically, I know you have to do the middle breastplate stuff. I think is that
the gorgette?
That's gorgette. But for this trim and shoulder, are you at a place now where you're kind of getting to that point where you're deciding how much more to keep going?
Yeah, it really is just a matter of, does this shine width on the gold feel good in contrast with the narrow shine on the black? Because what this does is it shows that the gold with that broader shine is a little more polished. The black with that narrow shine, right, feels like a different kind of metal, right? It doesn't have the big broad area, but they do line up, right, because of the way the light would reflect there. And I'm happy with that, right? The gold is like a weird oily polish. It still isn't super duper shiny, right? But it's not quite like, like brushed aluminum or something. Kind of an in-between. The longer you make those blends go, the more non-polished the material will look like, the more like your stainless refrigerator or stove it will look. Unless you have a chrome refrigerator, which you do you.
Mo, welcome in. Welcome in, everybody. See a bunch of people hopping in here.
Hi. Welcome to Wednesday. It's hump day.
Trying to get my FLGS to carry some Pro Acrylic paints. It's my absolute favorite paint. Thank you, the Sky Pie.
Awesome. Yeah, just have them contact us. We can get them all the information. We can help them through the process and figure out what works best for their store.
And tell them it will go quick and will be an instant favorite.
Yeah, the
that
biggest
seems to be
problem
our trend
with new stores when they think, like, why would I bring on another color of paint? The biggest problem they have with bringing in Pro Acryl is they actually see what happens when you get a community favorite going, and like that they have to order it and reorder it so often.
So on this gorgette here, are you using the same concepts as you do to the shoulder, or are you changing it up because of the shape?
It's always the same concept. The shapes will change how you approach it, right? So this shape will look a little different because it has half of it facing more of our light source and half away, whereas everything else is kind of all facing. Not all, but like the lion or legally distinct tiger on his shoulder plate is kind of facing into we have the backside gets a lot darker, right? But our light is kind of like right here as we're looking. Mm-hmm. So here you have a whole side of the line on the center that you really don't get much light. So I'm going to go for a little bit maybe of starker difference side to side, because then you pick back up where this shoulder plate is all kind of facing the light source from this direction. Right? So just how your angle of lighting is what's going to guide me here. Mm-hmm. And that's the hardest part for some people to figure out. We talk about a lot of hard parts with non-metallic metal, so I'd probably say 3 different things are the hardest part. But in reality, what is true there is that making that jump to a very bright color is very difficult. And then making sure that you're always treating the light sources coming from the same direction. So, figure it like, here it is. This is where my light, this is the way the sun sees this model right here. So I need to be able to put shine as if it's only going to hit directly these portions of the model. So a lot of times, here I'm looking at it on TV, right? So I can see myself on the screen painting, but I would say, okay, if that's the case, then I'm not seeing a lot of this over here, right? So I might only have like a couple of ticks of brightness at the very tip away from the light, and it's away from the light here because the stuff that's closer to the light is hidden behind that head. See, like the way I'm looking at it is like this, right? And so you can't see all those little engraved feathers that are on the inside here, except for at the very end. So the light would hit here, even though it would make more sense in your brain if it hit the part that was closer to the light source. But this thing shadows those. So it's actually the bits and bobs out further away, right?
Yep.
Like that.
Uh-huh.
And then you only have on these, because they then bow away from the light source, this part would only have light hit like up close.
Right.
Like right here, you leave a little gap for this feather to overlap that one and give you a little bit of a shadow. And then you punch a little brightness in right here at the beginning of those feathers, right? Like so, because now see, the only part I have paint on is the part you can see from where I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
My angle of looking at the model is a little different than the camera because the camera's moved over to the left from me. So this is how I'm painting, as I'm looking at it from right here. So you can see now I have highlight on all the feathers you can see. As we move away from that, you've got those spots that don't get that light hitting them.
Right.
right? So again, I would look like this and I would say, okay, well, what else of the lion's head gets a little bit of light? Well, there's a little bit of like this little poofy cheek thing.
Yep.
And maybe a little bit on this eye
Mm-hmm.
that pop out enough to do so. And then not really anything else. You know, you could probably be tricky and give yourself a little bit of gleam there.
Nice.
Right? But that's about all you're going to get. So always just look like if you were your light source, if you were the sun looking down on this model, what would you see? And don't be afraid to turn the model that way and then just kind of sneak in your paint on the parts you can see.
Mm-hmm.
We airbrush like this a lot of times, right? Where we'll airbrush the model and the model itself blocks the paint from going. So if I were to airbrush the side of his head here, no airbrush paint could get over here because the head's in the way.
Right.
And so it casts its own proper shadow if you do it right. So, you know, thinking in terms like that makes it a lot easier to figure out what would have highlights on it when doing things. No, not just non-metallics, but anything. You know, if I'm the sun and I'm shining down on the model like this, you can right now see all of the bits that should have highlighting, right?
Yep.
Anything that's not in frame. So don't be afraid to take a picture of this in your phone and pull it up on your phone and use it as a reference. So when you're looking at the model like this, you can always see like what actually happens. That's why zenithal highlighting with an airbrush or rattle cans is really important for people learning to get their whole light and shadow in balance. Is because if I were to put a zenithal highlight on a primed model, it's dark, and then wherever I choose my light direction, like here, hold the model like this, spray down on it, all of this area that I see is going to be lighter, and it's only going to be able to wrap around as far as the physical limitations of the paint being able to, which is just like light. So when you pull it like this, you have darkness down low, brightness up high, and that's why that works so well. You know, so you're just always having to, even in the details, when you've covered up your zenithals, continue to think of it like that. So you can say, okay, well, I'm only going to be able to put, or I really only want to put a highlight on the part that the sun can see.
Here's a good question. Now that you've established a directional light source, do you then go back and exaggerate the highlights and shadows on the faces?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. 100%. Exactly right. Because you can see how we balanced the face. I didn't choose a light direction.
Right.
It's the same highlight on both cheeks. We painted it as if the sun was up above and looking directly at him, right? But he's looking over here. The way I have his irises, he's looking at this side. So the model's kind of cool that everything he's looking and the light's coming from his left shoulder. And now we'll go back and highlight the forehead over here, this side of the nose, cheek. The hair will have more of a shine over here and all of that to match our light. And that will really sell our lighting direction when we start doing that. Everything else we've done in kind of a balanced manner so that we can unbalance it once we find something that makes sense to us with our brightest part of the model, which in this case is the gold. Great question.
If you, let me see this one. From Mortal Kombat. If you over highlight, can you knock it down by undershading from below, or is it better to filter?
Good question. I prefer filtering first if you can't get a darker color painted over. A lot of times I'll just paint over it with a darker color if it's too bright, right? I'll go back down one level of paint, whatever the color was I used before. I'll go back to that and paint over it and then re-highlight. That's easier for me. The filter can be great though. You just have to, know how to control it and make sure you don't overdo it as you go. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that works. Okay, and on this, I probably want my shine to just kind of hit this entire upper spot right below the lion. So I'm just going to kind of really quick brush strokes blend in some brightness as I go down. I don't have a lot of paint on the brush right now, so it's not going to be hyper opaque, which lets me play with that location of shine. It's not going to ruin it if I get a brush stroke a little out of place right now.
Very nice. Yeah, you can start to see the where the light is, where it's not necessarily on the other side, but you can see where it's hitting now.
Yeah. And it's really just a matter of, choosing this edge over here and going brighter along this edge. And then kind of what I'm doing right now is just kind of stippling a little bit of brightness over towards the other side but keeping my brightness towards our right, his left, so that I get this darkness to compensate for it over here. And the stippling allows it to kind of give it a texture and also blend in with the background without actually having to blend. Stippling is a great way to do that. And then same thing over here. Here, my highlight won't go up as high because over here I can get the highlight all the way up to the top of that band. But over here, the lion head would be in the way, right? So this would hit the light. There's nothing to block it. This side won't. So this side, the brighter section would start right here underneath the lion's beard as opposed to up higher, and won't go for as long, right? Because it'll still taper off the same way the one next to it did.
Nice.
And then these feathers over on this side, on our right, because we've done just a couple of deets and doots over here.
Yep.
But these feathers over here are going to be pretty bright. Notice how the collar here has been really bright. So these feathers are going to be pretty bright. So I will be a little bit more liberal with the application of paint here. And we're just going to do something like this.
Yeah, you really can start seeing where the light source is with this.
And we've still got some stuff here that we haven't hit, like on the
Papa
cheek.
Chicken. Never have I ever learned something more profound than yesterday's lessons on deets and doots. Well, it is obviously it's a fun term, but we're really seeing it in action here, right? So as silly as it sounds out loud, that's all he's doing. He's doing a little deet, he's doing a little doot. I guess that's like precision stippling. Is that what that's called? If you're to call it something
called
else?
deets and doots. What are you talking about?
That was a test I didn't pass. It's a deet.
That helps us get more of that brightness laid in. I probably want to do a little bit more into this little section on the cheek as well.
It's kind of a nice example, chat, when obviously we're at like 500% right now. If I back out to normal, right, you start to really see where the light is. Even see from that far away, you can see where the light is. Getting even closer, you can see it as well.
Yeah.
But you start really seeing it from a
well, and you'll notice like the bottom part of the gorgette here not being bright is keeping this from having a full impact. These feathers that I haven't done here, I need to figure out like how I want to do those because they start falling into being behind the shoulder plate.
Yeah.
Right? So you notice I didn't do those as bright as the other ones because I know we're getting close up here. This one looks like my light source would probably still hit the whole surface. This one, though, probably just down low, and maybe I leave, a little bit more darkness along the edge on these and only give them a little bit of brightness. But I don't paint them as super bright. As these out here. I'll go back and glaze even down into the shadow area that I've left here because there really wouldn't be much overlapping shadow from the edges to our left. The light would penetrate that. The only shadow we'll get is from the individual feather pieces that are above each of the other ones. But we can punch our brightness into this area in between them. Probably even more than that, right? I probably, I'm really dark here on these lines, and I can brighten all that up considerably and still be in line with our light source and our storytelling. Even this one.
Mr. Blue, since you're showing El Tigre right now, can you tell us when Blue Steel will be ready?
Blue Steel?
Are you talking about the... Is that a Zoolander reference?
Made from lion piss.
Yeah, Mr. Blue, yeah. What is this? A center for ants? What's up, everybody? Welcome in. If you're just now tuning in, we're doing some deets and doots on non-metallic gold. Really getting into the nitty-gritty with this one.
And a quick glaze of the bright pale yellow over the top of all my coloring on the flat part of the gorgette down here first. Then I'll go back with a layer that is not quite as dilute. So this is going to have a much brighter kick to it right out of the gates. And I'll start laying that over that bright glaze to get a shine spot. I got to be careful. The shine spot wouldn't be up high because the shoulder plate blocks it. So it'll be much lower like where I've got it now. And then it'll extend across this edge. Edges will carry shine and light along them further. All the way up to this little rivet. I even poke it up in there a little bit.
Jade, welcome in. Sarcastic Grandpa, welcome in. Oh, okay. Scar 52, first time catching a live stream, but I've been watching the series the last couple days. You guys have been a huge help for me trying to learn NMM. Well,
awesome.
We appreciate that.
I love it.
It's funny, chat, because now that I'm diving deeper into these edits, right? Right now I'm currently editing up the Black Armor workup, and I'm watching it as I'm editing it. I'm watching it, right? And then I'm like, oh, this video's, you have to cut down the VOD, but when it's funny because I'm like, oh, this could be like a 2-hour show. This could be like a 2-hour video, but that's what the VOD is.
It's like, it is a 2-hour Hulu. Have a little bit of shine on this part down here. Right, there's a little rivet there that would pick up some brightness. And I'm just going thinner with the paint and not as many passes so that I can get a little bit of shine right here. Right, that matches the shine that I've got coming down the feathers. I've always got to think that if I go too bright here, I also have to brighten up what I have around that same area because this is the same intensity of light that hits this entire side. So I'm keeping this toned down like I've got these, right? Then over here, I got to think, okay, well, if I'm super bright down here, I got to be super bright on the feathers and vice versa. So this whole side of the gorgette's much brighter. That gives us our direction of light.
Yep. And then just to recap, Patriots is asking, what are the color choices for this?
For the gold?
Yeah, for the non-metallic gold.
So we started with dark yellow-green and dark purple, right? And then orange oxide. Those are the colors that you see that give the heat and the cold nature of the underlying colors. And then on top of that, we did the bright yellow ochre is the yellowishness that you're really seeing. It's this color. That's the main gold color that we're noticing on the model. And then now it's the bright pale yellow, which is giving us the shine, the reflection. but the base colors are all like the orange oxide. You can kind of feel it like down in here. There you can see the orange here. This is a great section right here on where the shoulder kind of comes down and shades itself, because you can feel the orange, which gives the gold its warmth. You can feel the dark yellow green, right, which gives it a weird kind of almost dirty, tarnished, oily look. And then the dark purple that sits in there, right, in between those two in the shadows, which kind of cools off the shadows and gives us a darker reflective color. Rather than using blacks and whites, just keeps it more interesting.
Yeah, it's funny, the foundation, we keep talking about the foundation of it, but as you go back and you watch the past VODs, you'll start to see the just the build up, and it's always very, very fun to watch the process.
This side, again, let's look at where our sunlight is coming from, like this, right? So I'm shading everything that I can't see here, but see this section of the collar is going to be brighter because the light's going to hit it unimpeded. His head's not in the way, right? But it'll darken towards the back because his head does kind of shade that last part. So I'll blend from this back corner forward, and my brightest section will be right here on the collar. So I'm going to punch a lot of brightness in it right here. And then I'm going to do this edge real quick going to that, and then knock a bit of the paint off on my finger. Come back and again do that, and then just build up some brightness as I get up towards the front, and kind of do some deets and doots along this trailing edge away from the light to give it some texture. Boom. Now that collar is okay, and there's another section to it here that would also catch a little bit of light, like a panel line hidden underneath there. And I could choose to, maybe do a line of shine across here. We've got this reflecting back, so maybe that shines back into the collar like so.
Could you sub orange oxide for burnt orange? Patriots
Sure, burnt
asking?
orange is a great color for that. But maybe this shine on the shoulder plate reflects back into the collar here. So it would even shine and reflect back over on the dark side. So I'm going to do that right like that.
D-Fresh, do you think the purple, orange, and green you use to start the gold would affect metallic paints enough to do that underpainting step?
Yeah, we've shown it. We have a video up on the YouTube channel that does just that. It painted a shield on a War Machine troll where I underpainted with very bright. Now, the metallics are going to cover more of your color because they have the actual physical component of the metal flake in them. So you need to be aware that you have to go what seems to be insanely wrong with your brightness for your underpainting. So where on this, we did, the orange, the purple, and the green to get color on it. You could get the color, but you're needing to have more intensity of color because the metallic, I'm glazing non-metallic colors over the top. They're going to let more of the color show through because I can control the pigment better. With the metallic, you have the pigment that makes it the metal color, and then you have the mica or aluminum flake, and that's fairly, while the mica is translucent-ish, it's still going to not let much of the color below it shine through. So just be careful as you're glazing metallics over your base, because that's what you'll want to do. As you're doing that, you're going to want to go with more vibrancy. So I might even use something that's a more punchy orange, like Nova Orange. And then in place of the purple, probably royal purple instead of dark purple. And instead of the dark yellow green, probably yellow green. So just the next step up in brightness of those three colors would work really well, because then when you put the metallic on them, it's going to darken them back down with the metallic color. So you need to have, is that making sense? Anytime you're underpainting, you have to think of the color you're putting over the top. If the color you're putting over the top is hiding more of those colors because it's a metallic or it's darker, right? Then you need to have them be punchier and brighter. Like when we did the face painting on him was done with like bright yellow green as the green on the forehead, right? That's a real punchy color. because I knew that it gives me the ability to build my flesh tones back up over it, and it's still going to give me some yellow, because the yellow part of the bright yellow green is going to go away really quickly as I put darker colors on it. So picking up a brighter tone is going to help you a lot in that. But yeah, work great with metallics. No reason not to. Think of metallics as just a heavier covering paint. Forget the fact that it's reflective. I mean, you can't forget that, but, you know, it doesn't have to be treated any differently than any other paint in your range at all.
Yes, the highest color on these little highlights here is the bright pale yellow. It's looking great.
Yeah, and pretty quick. Doesn't take a whole heck of a lot of time. It started to look really good. In here, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of brightness along the edge just to give the edge some depth. This is where we're probably lying to ourselves. There's not a lot of reflection that's going to happen down in the collar, but you're going to want to get something, otherwise it looks really flat. So, you know, realism only goes so far when looking at a model. You never want anything to look boring. Real life is a lot more boring, right?
Right.
So this is the case where fiction outweighs fact. And instead of the, you know, truth is stranger than fiction. In this case, fiction is the stranger that we want. I'm going to go ahead and put I'm still going to follow the rules of my lighting direction, but I'm going to go ahead and highlight some things that probably would not have highlight, just to pull those details out in there. And maybe they would. Maybe we could say that this shoulder plate over here is highlighting back into it a little bit, but, you know, I think that's a stretch. I've left the shadow of his chin being a little overdone here. It wouldn't be quite that much, but I like the reflective nature of it, so it kind of makes it feel like it has a lot more depth.
Yeah, the little rivets and this part is always so mesmerizing.
So hopefully you can see, while you may not be able to wrap your head around lighting and direction and shine just yet, hopefully you can see that once you spend some time figuring it out, this is just painting the same way you're painting anything else. It's just the intensity of the color and the timing of the placement, right, that's really going to get you there. And by that I mean that you got to make that jump to a really bright color from a not so bright color to make it look like it's shining. Right? I'm happy with that.
Yeah, looks great. Patriots, if this is your first time, it sounds like, how often do you stream? We stream every day, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Every day. Help me.
Yes.
Help.
I have to make his...
I'm trapped.
He's not. But I guess that is what the captor would say. Nah, he's fine.
He's fine. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Jason has been streaming for, 10 years? 9 years?
9 years.
9 years.
No, I've been painting for 45.
Painting for 45. We've been...
we like that. We like that number, 45. I've been painting since I was 8 years old. How old am I now? 55. So what is that? That's a lot more than that now. 47 years will be this year.
47.
It's like 8 or 9 is when I picked up a brush. I wasn't really painting then, you know. I was an impatient kid that just slapped paint on models, but it was when I really started finding that I really loved this whole world of painting miniatures. So it still resounds. I haven't painted consistently through that entire time, but I like to use that number. It makes me feel official.
Papa Chicken. He's scratching his head. Jason, when was the last time Chris paid you? Do you need to contact the AZ Labor Commission? See what I've done, chat? He's been paid. He's paid this bust him as when he was 31.
Yes, King Tone, exactly.
It's all part of the process.
Patriots. I did. I scratched with both hands. That's how hostage I'm held. Chris never pays me. As a matter of fact, nobody around here pays me. I need to have a contact with HR. No, nobody pays me. They work me to death, but they don't give me anything for it. I get these wonderful models, and I get to spend time with you guys Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thanks for your participation.
Here's a kind of like a funny question for you.
Hmm?
You know, so I was just thinking about this, and maybe chat can relate. When do you want to switch off a project? Because obviously, when something speaks to you now, well, I think we know yours, but for you in your mind, when are you like, I need to switch to something else?
That's a great question. A lot of time it's boredom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about it with like armies a lot. Like if I'm painting a squad or, you know, a army or warband or something, and they're all like, especially like Space Marines, that are all exactly the same. You know, maybe one of them has a helmet off or whatever, but generally they're the same. My boredom sets in pretty quick. I really like the exploratory side of painting, and so busts and larger models like this are kind of all an exploration, especially when I get to use them as a tutorial method for you guys. Then we can kind of explore together. We can use some funky colors. We can show you some really cool, unique ways to get to colors that you have a hard time with, that makes it easier, maybe makes the light bulb go off quicker for you. So that part of it makes it really interesting for me. But repetitive painting gets lost because I'll do like the model. My Blood Angels, I always pull them out. This is a great example. We did what I would call exploration in paint with the first couple of them as we figured out how we wanted the Payne's Gray and the Dark Plum and what colors I would use for Lightning Claws and the Jump Pack exhaust and jet stuff. And once all those colors are done and I'm like, yeah, that looks rad, then I'm bored.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, I got to do 100 of these.
Then I'm bored. I need to be able to turn it over to my lackey.
Yeah.
You know, I need my Robin in the Batcave, and I need to be, okay, boy, paint. I have created and shown you the light. Make my army happen. Because for me, the repetitiveness of it loses some of the luster. It no longer becomes exploratory because I've already found the path and I've had fun with it. And it is the bane of my existence because I really want to get whole armies painted too. So I have to get myself in tune and say, I'm just going to sit down and do, like, I have the Dark Angels army that the official Anthony L.T. Gray, or Lionel Johnson, the official Lionel Johnson from Forge World, when I painted him, he goes with an army that I also painted. And in order to make sure that the army didn't bog me down, I literally took like 50 units and based them and airbrushed the top coats. And we had a really cool way of doing the dark greenish black armor on these guys. So I did all of that. And then I left them alone for a while because that was fun to work that color up. And when I nailed it on the first model, I just went and did it on 50 models, vehicles and all, right? Then I settled down for a while. Then we go back and we do like maybe the bronze trim, which is all non-metallic metal. And I did that on squads and squads of Beaky Marines, right? And then got that done and then set them down. And then went back and picked out a couple of vehicles and did some land speeders and did the guns and stuff on them and got those to the point where they're okay. You know, nothing's really done in the army, but I'm making strides and I do it chunks at a time. And then it really relies on my interest in the game or the army to fuel that. And that feels good when I do that because it like makes big chunks of the army happen at a time. But I have to remember to do that because if I make the mistake to paint a couple characters, then I'm kind of done.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's really answering your question, but that's just me.
No, absolutely. I think, you know, some people are like, okay, before I go on to this project, I got to finish this project, right? But shouldn't be that rigid. But some people do like that.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I paint for the joy of painting, and so it doesn't have to be, it's not usually tied to any particular model. There are projects we do, like, you know, doing this guy right now is one of those projects where I'm like excited to get it done. So at the end, we can all sit here and watch the videos and talk about the process and really have some fun with it. That part I really like. So, you know, there are those models that happens with, and I'm super stoked about those. There are others where it's just like once I've done like, oh, this would be really cool to show you how to paint wings, and we get it all done and paint the wings, and then I don't care about the model anymore.
It's almost like it was a subject that got you painting.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy when I think about it, that the teaching side of me will look at a model differently than the cool nerd, vision that you have
that's
for
what
it.
the texture trainers are for.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Like the reason I designed the texture trainers the way I did was hoping to create forms that I would enjoy painting, to show you painting that face on the crone for the 50th time with a new color combo is just as cool, because I design the shapes and it's fun to paint that. Yeah. Whether I finish the crone 50 times or not is kind of irrelevant. That would be boring. But the fact that you can go in and pick something. So again, like Rule of Cool for me has almost two faces on the coin. One of them is, for me, I really want to paint that model. And that's probably where I'll go through the whole process and paint the whole thing. And the other one is where it's like, oh, there's something really, really cool. The armor, the hair, the wings. I can show you guys something, and we can take a journey together with a part of a model. But when I'm done with that part, I don't care, and it goes on a shelf. So, because I didn't really care about the model. I just cared about that it had something really cool that I wanted to paint, and it would be a great platform to show you how to paint that. So I guess there's a weird world I live in where sometimes it's not the full model. It's just part of it that I'm excited to show.
Bud is asking, are you ever, in the future, will there be any streams showing various ways to use basing products?
We could.
It's interesting. It was funny because I actually really like, Jason's, your basing scheme. You typically keep very low key. Mm-hmm. Like, what was it with the, like how you did your Battletech and how you did the bear?
Yep.
But yeah, those.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it has to do with what is the goal of the model when I'm basing. Yeah. It's easy to get carried away and have the basing overtake the paint job you've done.
I fall victim of that, my Sylvaneth, for sure. I loved it, but then it's like, oh, they are in a forest.
Yeah, and it can be too much, right? Yeah. It can kind of take away from the story you're trying to tell, and make all your hard work kind of fall to the background. So I'm usually taking a look at that and trying to figure out, okay, well, does that, is that the goal? Because if I want to go extreme with basing, then I got to plan the whole model/army around the basing being part of it too, which is not bad, right? There's nothing wrong with that.
It becomes super involved though, like when you're like, okay, do I base it now? Do I, don't base anything and do the bases separate? I fall victim to that all the time because I love basing.
Yeah. Well, and it's really fun, right? And it can it can really bring storytelling into the model when you have it sitting in an environment. So why not make it something you spend time on? But it can be overwhelming. I've seen people do dioramas and put in certain elements that they don't paint, because they found like plastic plants that look really cool, like jungle-based diorama, and you get plants from like the fish store that go in a fish tank, and they're really bitching, and they're the right leaf and the right scale, and they tell the right story, and you put them on the base, and they're already green, and you're like, rad, and you don't paint them, and you're like, wow, that looks fake on your model. And people will look at me like, well, the whole model's fake, dude. It's all made out of plastic. And I'm like, yes, but you spend a lot of time painting part of your fake plastic, and the other part of your fake plastic you did not paint. Yeah. And so it can get really off. So you just have to be careful as you migrate around doing terrain. I'm not happy with this dark spot here. I feel like I feel like the front of this eyebrow and such, now that we've brightened up the gorgette and got this lighting direction, and we turn our model to look at the way the light would hit, right? And I have that brightness there. I need to find more brightness on the shoulder plate, right? And one of the places I need more brightness is in through here.
Okay, so we're going back and adding a little bit more brightness based off of the little gorgette spot. Is that kind of your
I like the
process?
way the gorgette looks. So now I have to tune things to that. If I've chosen to have it be that bright from that direction, then I got to make sure that everything that is facing that direction gets that same kind of intensity. And there's a lot of flat spots on this shoulder plate that would have bigger reflective areas, and this piece right here is one of them, but it would be back here towards the rear of it, which is kind of funky.
Ghost Hunter, I really like the basing textures, but I would love if there was an easier way to apply it to the base.
I mean, they just paint on, right?
Yeah, you have to kind of get used to the, I love spatulas for basing texture. It works great. Brushes are great too. But I use a little metal spatula. Artist palette, whatever.
Yep. palette knife.
All right, Papa Chicken. What would you... Let me read this here quick. What would your approach be to basing colorful pools of water like the Grand Prismatic in Yellowstone? I wanted to actually color the still water, but each layer of the new color ruined the color beneath it. When I painted the dirt and just put clear still water over it, it didn't look right.
I don't know the thing you're referring to as far as like what you want it to look like.
I'm gonna...
Chris might be able to bring me up a reference to
now I'm curious on what that looks like.
So see how I've now brought this flat plane where the light is hitting. I'm now picking up these flat planes here and adding more intensity to them to match.
I know what you're talking about now. It's this.
Kind of iridescent. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of
it's like when you do that acrylic pour stuff. You do a color over a color over a color, and it's the last color that's the middle one, and the other colors on the outside.
Yeah.
So you would
That's a tricky question.
You could paint that layer by layer and do like the problem is that like the orange is at the top, right? The top outside and the blue is the deep middle.
Yeah, it looks like it.
So you would do like a pour with like the blue, that radiant blue pour and do it thin at the bottom. Then you would pour a layer over the top of that and move the greenishness towards the edges. Right? You could paint that. You could pour a clear layer and then paint the green on towards the edges once that layer is dried, and then pour a layer that's more yellowish and paint it out towards the further edges, and then pour a final layer that's orange that's out at the very rim. But you'd have to be painting those layers subsequently because there's no way to get that clear to let the blue and the color around the ring on the outside. There's no good way to manage that in a pour. But that's the way I would handle it.
Thank you for that sub, NTB Obey. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You guys are just tuning in. We are doing the deets and doots of non-metallic metal on gold here. Jason's been working on this model the last week and a half. You can see the black buildup from last week along with the face, along with the video that we just posted about the face. We'll have a black armor workup coming to you soon. And now we're just doing some deets and dudes. Jason, can you come down just a little bit?
No.
Pretty please?
No.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you. Yes, welcome in everybody. Yeah, Papa Chicken, that's a tough one. That's a very unique piece.
Neat. Yeah, very neat. But hopefully what I said made sense. So I think that's how I would tackle it.
Instead of just like painting underneath it and then putting still water above it.
Yeah, because that's layered.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to want to make it have depth. And that's the cool thing with doing that resin pour like that is that you can make it have that depth, but each layer wants to be its own color. And it'll cover up the blue and such if you're not painting it by hand on those subsequent layers, I think.
MBT Obeys asking, on the topic of Battletech, are you willing to post your painted mechs on the Discord group shot?
I'm sorry, what's that?
They're asking about potentially just taking a picture of all your Battletech.
And doing what with it? Yeah, I mean, sure.
Put it in the Discord. Sure. I'll take a note. I could do that. Actually really cool.
I don't know that we ever really took a faction shot once they were all at the point. I need to do basing on some of them because I changed my army list kind of halfway through.
Yeah.
That process. I actually painted way more models than we said we painted.
You also have all that new stuff too.
Well, yeah, but that's not for that. So.
Oh.
I mean, that's not for the Wayward Sons.
Oh, right.
And see, one of the things that I'm having to look at is that if we're looking at it here and this level of brightness is at that level of height on the model, right? And this, front to back, that level of brightness is this far forward, then this shine spot needs to be brought forward to match that, right? Otherwise, this part of the shoulder would not be quite that dark.
Right.
Right? So I need to brighten this up. So I'm going to
brighten the whole shoulder.
Yeah, I need to bring my brightness more to like here. Right? Which means that all of this would brighten up as well.
Ghost Hunter's asking, what was the name of your BattleTech leader again?
It's on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
And the Wayward Sons. If you get it, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know. So
it's everybody's favorite karaoke song.
Now I'm seeing that now.
See how that made a big difference on why this is so bright now, because this is.
Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. There'll be peace when they are done shooting. At the end of the shooting phase.
The end of the shooting phase.
NB Toby, yeah. Yeah, that's them. That's the Wayward Sons. That's my battle, or my battalion, right? Are all the same. We did the dropship that has the same color scheme to it. That 3D printed dropship, which is really cool. And then they can lay their weary heads to rest. You guys got it. You're singing it in your heads right now. That's the thing with that. When I lay it down and I say, this is Carry On and her Wayward Sons, everybody hears the music in the background. Right? It just starts. You can't help it.
Captain Beardy's asking, do you have a selection of paints that you find yourself gravitating towards for mixing highlight colors / universal highlights?
Yes. Great question. One of them I'm using right now, bright pale yellow. White blue is another one. Fantastic. The bright neutral gray is one. Olive flesh is one. There's a bunch, right?
Olive flesh.
And it really comes down to what the color that I'm highlighting is. If the color is a cooler color, meaning a blue or a cool purple, something like that, then white blue typically reigns supreme. If it's a warmer color, then I typically gravitate towards one of the more yellow colors. Pale pink, too, is a fantastic one.
Derpstick's asking, just ordered 20 paints. I needed a refresher for the red, green undercoat for face technique. Do you paint the entire head purple? No, if you go back and you look at that video we just posted on Monday.
You can.
Oh, you can?
You can.
That's true.
I did not on this specific lesson because while I was explaining it, I chose to show where those colors are meant to show through. Mm-hmm. So I only painted them there. It is easier if you just do purple all over. And then you fit the red and the bright yellow green in over that. It guarantees you get the purple as the shadow layer wherever you need it, and then you direct traffic. I did not do it like that in the filming of this. It's also why I use the bright or why I use the dark neutral gray primer. It's a little less dark. So it would allow me to show where those bands of color were. So dark purple, just where it was supposed to go, red, because I was trying to drive home the reasons why those colors go there. But yes, like if you were doing this, you could airbrush, like if you were doing a large, like a barbarian and lots of skin, I would choose to just airbrush him dark purple.
The whole thing.
Just start dark purple. Yeah, because you imagine how much time it takes to put the dark purple in between all the rippling muscle groups and all that stuff. Nah, just paint it all purple. That way you cover everything with the shadow color you're going for. Then you spend your time with the red and the green.
Gotcha. And he explains that more if you go back to the VOD as well on the 6th last Monday. He explains that in even more detail when he's doing the face. Smelly Fellow, the only thing I have wrapping around my head is the painting, or I'm sorry, maybe it says hard. the only thing I have wrapping my head around.
Like a hard time wrapping it around.
Is painting lights and shadows from different angles other than the light source coming directly from above the zenithal highlighting. So you're having problems with painting lights and shadows from different angles other than the light source.
Do you mean like secondary
Like
reflection and stuff?
Or are you talking about the darker areas?
Like this stuff here? Where we have a secondary reflection?
I think that's what you're
like
talking
how to
about.
choose where to put it. I'm typically somewhere in the neighborhood of like 45 degrees out from my normal shine spot for that. James, nice. Hoosiers, what's up? Turn your model on its side and use the same light. You laugh, but the reality, when I show people how to do zenithal highlighting, one of the things that we talk about is exactly that. You do like, okay, so if I zenithal this guy and I wanted the light to come from where it's coming, I would spray it from like this direction, right? And so the brightness would hit all these areas that you see the gold brightness, but it would be dark on this side if I look at the opposite side. So I'd take the opposite side and I would do a light dusting from this side. So you have a little bit of upglow coming from the opposite. It's 180 degrees off from your light source. And that would give you kind of a reverse glow of the, you know, because we talk about the fact that whatever light is hitting him here, right? If I turn him like this, whatever light is hitting him here is also hitting stuff in the background and bouncing back. So, you know, if it hits a wall that's over here on this side of him, right, it's going to bounce back and create brightness on this side of him, but it's going to be dimmer, right? These highlights don't go as bright as these do to show that the light that's hitting him has already been absorbed and reflected by something not quite as shiny. But when I'm doing it, I try to think about it being about 45 degrees off from my main shine spot. Not 180, you know, I don't know that I would go that drastic, but like you see, like here I have the line across the cylinder of the arm, and then about 45 degrees lower, I have this little light line of shine on the underside, right? So that's kind of the rule of thumb that I go by. There's no real reasoning behind it. It just looks cool.
Speaking of purple as shadows, do you recommend something like Payne's Gray for a cooler toned model?
Yeah, purple can also be cool though. Remember that purple has, I love dark purple and royal purple as shadows because they can be warm. If you push into warm colors and use them, they will cool the warm colors off a bit, but play well with them instead of being like blue and then red. Right? Purple and red allows the bluish tone of the purple to play well as a cool shadow, but the purple leans itself into the warmer colors and gives you a more natural blend, in my opinion, for flesh, warmer colors like yellows, reds, oranges, things like that. Blue can be great with like greens, right? You know, blue's a component of green. So again, we wind up having blues cooling off warmer greens, yellows, things like that can work really neat. So both of them are great. It's funny because I use purple most of the time, unless I'm painting something in the hue of purple, at which point in time I use blue.
Yeah.
Because then I want the purple to appear warmer, so I use blue to cool the purple off in the shadows. But a lot of people just go with blue on everything, and that's also cool, right? Cool. That's also cool. Cool as in awesome, and also cool as in temperature. So yeah, you can use either. I'm a big fan of purple because I just think it gives a really cool visual depth to something that makes people engage with what they're looking at more. They understand that the shadows are cooler. They may not know how to verbalize it, but they get it. That's a shadow. But then the warmth of the shadow coming out of there too, that purple is a neat color to play with. I very rarely paint things purple, but I use purple on every model. Just about every model that I can think of. Let's just grab, right? Like dwarf guy here, right? I think Tim was asked about him yesterday.
Yeah, Tim was asking.
You know, I use like dark purple probably as a shadow base on him, although it looks actually like I use like mahogany on him. There's really no purples there. I use mahogany, right? So, you know, but it's rare that I would do that. Right? There's some Payne's Gray or dark blues as the shadow tone on the skin, right?
Smelly fella, the light source for all the shadows and highlights coming from directly above is how I was always painted, like Shep Payne taught me. Light source coming from any other angle is just weird for me to figure out. I don't know
10
if that
and 2
clarifies it.
is what Shep was telling me, right? Like in the class, 10 and 2 were your cardinal directions for lighting. Directly above creates problems because now all the shadows on the model are very harsh, right? where and almost can be unrecognizable. So 10 and 2 makes it a lot easier. You pick a lighting direction, all of your shading is going to be unbalanced across the model, whereas directly above, it's too linear and symmetrical the way your shadows fall. It makes it look unrealistic. Having 10 and 2 be your directions pushes the shadows in weird directions. You're going to have like one peck won't have much shadow, one peck will if you're doing that barbarian, right? One half of the body has way more shadow than the other. One's in light, one's in shadow. It gives some dynamicism and motion to your model. Directly above, put your model very still, very mannequin-like, and typically makes the shadows too symmetrical. It relies on the shape of the model to determine whether or not that looks good. There are some models that look great with a light directly above, but it's all based in the model already having all that motion to it, right? So the model's like lunging forward, so directly above is kind of 10 and 2. We've just moved the model over. Does that make sense? Because most of our models that we paint are straight up and down, right?
Yeah,
so what's a good example? Like all I have is straight up and down models here, right? So with the straight up and down models, there's not really any reversing of 10 and 2. Oh, here's a good example, right? Ephria, the model I designed for our Mother Loving Paint Party, she's at a near 45-degree angle. Let me see if I can get it. She's like at a near 45-degree angle because the tree trunk she's hanging onto is angled. This one, I could have done light from directly above, and it would have worked. Directly above meaning directly above, like from the base, like perpendicular to the base. My light source could have been straight up and down like this, and it would have worked well because there's no symmetry to her. She's not straight up and down. If she was like this, you wouldn't want to do that, right? But when the model's leaning over, then straight up and down can work. When the model's straight up and down, a light source from directly above makes too much symmetry in your shadows, and you get bands of bright and dark, and it looks fake, which is crazy. But it's mostly because when we paint models like this, like military scale models can be a little different because they don't have the exaggerated details on them. When we're painting fantasy and sci-fi models, like the belts have a lot of dimension to them, the pockets on a shirt have dimension to it. It's all hero scale stuff. And so you wind up with shadows where there wouldn't be visually shadows on a normal thing, right? Now with her, I actually chose to highlight from the facial side, and the darkness comes from this side, right? Just to keep some drama on the whole vignette that we created. But
is that an actual stick? Someone's asking.
What's that?
Hoosier's asking.
No, that's resin.
Actual stick?
That's resin.
Hoosier, I thought so a little bit too. I'm like, oh, is that?
No, that's all
stick?
resin. That was just a model I designed for the Mother Loving Paint Party.
When was that?
Huh?
When was that?
21. During COVID. We decided we were going to have some fun with the community. Everybody's locked at home, and so we did the models. We did a different pair of models each quarter, and you could buy them and paint along with the stream. And at the end of it, we picked a winner, and that winner won every paint and brush we made, plus a frozen or EPAX printer and a bunch of resin. It was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. If you're all just tuning in, we are doing some non-metallic gold. We started this work up last Friday, and we started there, and now we're here. So.
Who's just like, liar, that's got to be real. It's a resin stick. It's a resin alien tree. If you zenithal, you're doing that at a 10 and 2 angle and not up and down with a bright color. Yes, Caped Beardy. Yeah, 10 and 2. You do your dark color all over the model. Then you pick 10. 10 and 2 is the way I like to do it. You know, it's just the easy numbers to remember, right? You just kick over 30 degrees either direction off of center on top and then spray your model. And it gives you a really cool shading. Right? No matter what. Now, which one you pick is sometimes based on the model. This guy's very... See, now I lost my screen.
Oh.
Not kicked back on. But, like, this guy's very symmetrical side to side, but I tilted his head. Like, you could have his head pivot and face straight forward. I just chose to have him looking over the shoulder, made it more illustrious. I don't know. Kingly. And so now... And because now that we could set him on a plinth like this, and it would be a really good-looking pick, right? So then I chose that this is the way I would light him, because that's what I call the money shot, right? It's like, where do you want people to pay attention to this model if they were just going to pick it up and look at it? Because the nature of people is they'll pick it up and they won't look at the back of the model. They'll turn it to what they think is the front, right? And if you have a model that's, like this guy, they could pick him up and look at him like this, or they could pick up and look at it like this, right? Because they can look at directly in the eyes, like face on. Or they could pick up and do like this. So I will do the highlight like abruptly off his left shoulder. So they pick it up and they look him in the eye, but then they tilt him to the brightness, and they've created that vision themselves because the most contrast is over here. And then they'll go back and go, oh, it's really cool how the light is on this, man. It's like dark on one side, and bro, that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But I'm doing that as a way, it's a psychological approach to painting and setting the scene. And you can imagine like a top-down lighting wouldn't do any of that, right? A top-down lighting wouldn't create any of that visual interest on the model that makes people have an experience when they look at it, right? And that experience for me is when we're painting it and you guys start to see it evolve into its final product, right? So it's more interesting to do that. And this is the 10 and 2 where we've done him from the 2 side, right? And we've just decided to rotate the model around here and then do it at 2 o'clock. Make sense? I didn't zenithal him, but same thing. I'm still painting the light the same way as if I had zenithal it. I'm still picking that same direction. The zenithal would just make it easier for you to see what's supposed to be highlighted earlier. And could give you a really cool dynamic look. And that's how I do every model I paint. Well, I say not every model. You know, certain models like just Space Marines, I don't really care. Although this guy is probably, 2, because he's very dark over on this side and very bright over on this side. But again, for normal like gaming miniatures, it's less of a worry for me. Mm-hmm. You can kind of tell what my choice is based on which side I've highlighted. So I've highlighted to the right, so it's 2 o'clock. There's no highlights on the left edges of these things. It's just all of my edge highlighting's done to the right of every panel. So that's 2 o'clock.
Heresy, is that a 100 streak? Wow, nice. That's crazy. Welcome in, everybody. Tech Elf just bought an Evo bag just in time for a business trip next week. Nice.
Awesome. Very awesome. Ghost Hunter says, every time I see that bear on stream, I bury my copy of it deeper in your pile of opportunity. Why? It's so much fun to paint. And Kate Beardy, awesome. Yeah. Kate Beardy says, I'm trying to take more paint, light, not color approach to minis, and this has been super helpful. And that is what I love to hear. Painting light, not color. It has sort of an abrupt sense to it that it's like, well, what do you mean not color? No, but it's focus on light before color, and you will win every time. Because you will set up so much visual interest. Our eyes are drawn towards contrast. So that's why when you're taking photographs, you got like the perfect hour.
Yeah.
Right? That perfect hour, that magic hour, or whatever they call it in photography, is where you get the perfect amount of glow and contrast from natural lighting that puts the right amount of shadow. It's not too intense, not too light. It's just great. And they do like one bounce foil.
Yep, that's it.
You do like one bounce foil in the magic hour. It's all you need, a camera and one reflector, and you're done. Yep. Because it's the perfect amount of radiant light. It's the perfect amount of environmental bounce light. It's just great. And that's what we're trying to create. No other point in the day looks that. Noon is very abrupt because noon causes really short shadows, but lots of shading on individual components, right? Yep. And then as you go through the clock, you start getting longer and shorter shadows and stuff. But that's why 10 and 2 is pretty cool, because it puts a nice short shadow onto a thing, but it gives you enough darkness to create contrast and keep the visual nice and punchy.
Paint light, not color.
Yeah. I get, it's funny. We will talk if you get a bunch of artists sitting around and you listen to us like, crazy old men yelling at clouds, right? Where we'll talk about, like, I wish somebody hadn't made that video, or I wish we never invented the term slap chop, or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And one of the biggest things that I hear artists talk about is I wish people wouldn't focus on asking me what color I used. All of the artists that I talk to, that will come up in some conversation saying, oh my God, it drives me nuts. Somebody will say, what blue did you use? And I'm like, it doesn't matter what blue I used if you're asking the wrong question. Right. It's like in the Matrix. It's like, you're not asking the right question, again. And he beats on him, you're not asking, you're not doing it right. And he beats him up again in the karate thing, it's like, that's what it is. Cause you're not asking the right question. You will not progress your own adventure in painting as well as it could be if you're focused on what color people are using, because it's the way the color is used to reproduce light on the model that is giving the effect that's making you ask what color that is, right? Because it isn't anything about the color. You could grab whatever color you wanted, and if you understand how it's being used to recreate that light and darkness on the model, you'll win with whatever color you like. And that's where everything you do becomes more powerful. Every paint in your collection, whether you have 4 and you're painting CMYK or you have 400 from every brand, every paint is more valuable to you when you use it from a perspective of light and darkness first. It's great.
Wheeler's Minis, thanks for that sub.
Spatsnat, we get that a lot too. What flavor of paint did you use? Donkey butt. All the
Swifty
time,
Bear,
donkey butt.
paint light, not color. Don't eat the paint. My
What's
hobbies.
next? What's next from you people
Trademark.
bossing me around? Papa Chicken says, you're not the boss of me. I'm going to paint color now.
That's assuming if every pair wants to become a better artist. I, for one, don't, says Source.
I'm not interested in becoming better.
I don't want all
Hey,
of
and
this.
that's perfectly fine. And there's lots of cool ways to paint that still give you like the whole underpainting method. People call it slap chop, zenithal highlighting, whatever you choose to do, contrast paints and all that give you a really good, but they're all built on the same functionality that I'm telling you. It's just that they've taken a mode of saying, we're not willing to explain it to people. We're just going to say, do this, and it creates light on your model. Dry brush your model with a bright color over a black base and just make sure your dry brush all hits the model from the same direction. What you've done is you've just painted light on your model. Then you can put a contrast paint over it and you get the effect we're talking about and a very quick, easy, I don't want to learn, method. It's great. So all of those give you a great ability, but that's what they're all hinging on, right? Is they're hinging on the ability to recreate light in a more intense method on your model to make it visually more stunning than if you just put like a base coat on your Marines and then put a wash on them. That doesn't do lighting very well. So. Swifter says, maybe some of us enjoy our mediocrity. I'm not saying you don't. I'm not saying that's not good. Paint how you love it. I've always said, and I will stick to it till they put me in a box, is, whatever gets you to the finish line and enjoy the process is the right way to paint.
That's right.
100%. Don't listen to me.
Just
don't listen to anybody. Paint the way it makes you happy when you finish the model. Use the products and paint with a technique. No matter what I say, I'll say do and don't on this channel occasionally. I usually am not harsh like that. But I'll go into the, you're doing it wrong. Old man yells at clouds. And you just have to remember that no matter what anybody on the internet or in any classroom tells you, it's up to you to find the way to fun in this hobby.
Patriot's asking, how often do you do tutorials on steel non-metallic colors?
Quite often.
Well, yeah, we do. If you, obviously, we're a little bit more pinpointed now in the stream, but I mean, I would say a majority of Jason's models that he paints are non-metallic metal, unless he's doing a big force or a unit, right, Jason?
Oh, I'm an idiot. Yes, all my forces.
Well,
and units
I
are
guess
also
no, that's
non-metallic,
true.
actually, but yes.
Unless
Yeah.
you're doing something like super, super quick.
Yeah. But non-metallic steel, we do a bunch of. It just depends. Again, when we talk about metals, we have to talk about in terms of how reflective or non-reflective they are. You'll hear me use the term painting reflective surfaces as opposed to non-metallic metal. Non-metallic metal is a term we know in the hobby. It's not a term used outside of that, but in the hobby, we say non-metallic metal versus true metallic metal a lot. And there's an understanding there, but I have to ask questions beyond that. Like, this is non-metallic steel. Right? All the armor on Percival and his pile of bodies is all non-metallic steel. It's not very shiny, right? It's dull used armor. So that is more of your how do I paint, used and abused armor on warriors kind of a thing. Then there's the kind of stuff where you're like, oh, but I really wanted it to be ultra shiny, non-metallic. And do I have an example of something like that? Here's a shinier sword, right? So I go much brighter than any of the armor and much darker quickly than any of the armor too. And so you get a little bit more of a reflective surface, like it's a polished edge. And so there's lots of variations in between. There's, very quick, what I would call wish.com non-metallic metal, where we go through and we do something like the chains on his arm that takes like 30 seconds, right? It's just all done in grays. It's dark neutral gray, bright neutral gray, and you're really just edge highlighting and poking a little bit of bright neutral gray on corners to make shine. And that's just a dull steel, chain. And so that's something you can do real quick. So there's numerous ways to do it. It really just comes down to what are you trying to replicate? What kind of feel do you want the end game to have? But yeah, we show you all the time.
Sir Addie's, that's a great question. What about young bloods in the hobby? Where we're all depending on a young people entering the hobby.
Oh yeah.
You probably even from an economic point. I get that. So basically, to summarize that question, what are you doing to get young people into the hobby besides the gorgeous stream and very interesting streams?
Wow, that's a great question. Paint and takes that we support all over the world are one of my favorite things because they are usually at events where families are attending, like Comic-Cons, places that are not necessarily really deep into our hobby, but are filled with nerds and nerd-centric, nerd-adjacent things, comic book collecting, whatever. And so the paint and takes I love. And we sponsor numerous of those throughout every year, and we attend as many as we can. That's getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
But I love going and painting. I'll paint a model. I don't have one in front of me, but I will usually, whatever model the people are being given to paint, I'll take one of those and I'll paint at my painting station to show people the capability as they paint this thing. And it's weird because in our world here on stream and on the internet, amongst people who do a lot of miniature painting, you'll get comments like in chat, like, hey, when you show me your bear, I'm never going to paint mine. Because we're doing that comparison in our head. It's like, mine will never look that good. I'm not doing this. I got to tell you, when you get kids that paint their first model, they are so excited to come show me that model.
They're like, oh my gosh,
and it can look like it's dipped in pig crap. It doesn't matter. They're super stoked about the fact that they just had a lot of fun doing it. And they want to look at mine and say, I chose the same colors. And man, does that give me the drive to be like, yes, dude, you nailed it. Because I've been a big fan of anybody that has the bravery to put a paint drop on model, spread it around, and then show their friends is a hero in my eyes. And so those things are great. So I think that's really where the juice comes from in this industry. I don't know how many young people are finding the hobby more and more probably from their parents and getting involved in like the painting of Space Marines early on and the gaming aspect of it. But there's a lot of people that just find like a paint and take. Free model, free hour of time to sit down and paint and do it all for nothing. Parents love it. Everybody gets hyped. And I see more people leave there wanting to ask more questions about our hobby than anywhere else in the spaces I wander through. So that's where I think it starts. And that's the best place, is to get kids and people that are interested in the creativity of this nerd world we live in, whether it's Pokemon or, you know, the games they play or the comics they read or the movies they watch. Show them that there's a world where that all exists in a physical form. You know, it's like action figures that you can spend some time painting, because a lot of kids really, we found a lot of parents that are like, my son never sits still, but he took this miniature and this paint and this brush and sat for an hour and painted and didn't move an inch. And so you'll see parents be like, where do I buy all this stuff? Because it's like built-in babysitter almost for some parents. So you'll see the light bulbs going off for all sorts of reasons, because it really does help to focus people. Making things with your hands is always a focusing act, right? It doesn't have to be building a watch. That's like the ultimate focus. I got to be like micro zoomed in, put the thing and the jewels and, you know, all that. But painting is along there. It's like anytime you're painting, especially in miniature, because it really draws that focus in. I got to paint the belt just right. Tongue sticking out, stand on my left foot, perfectly balanced, get the paint where it goes. And the dopamine hit from getting it right is like, woo! And it works for every age. So it's super awesome.
Swifty Bear, on the topic of non-metallic metal, for the challenge this month, I'm wanting to do a rusted suit of armor. Would you just like true metal or trying to do NMM with rusted metal? I love the rusted metal technique Jason gave me.
I got to be honest.
A couple years ago,
the way that we show you, whether it's like, you know, I did these guys in Noosh, right? And so this is just true metallic, you know, silver, dark silver, and then our Noosh product with burnt sienna, right? So it gives you a rusty metal. Zoom into the 500.
Yeah.
And you can see, like, it gives me kind of a dirty, oily, rusty look on there. And that's all metallics and dry brushing, and super easy to do and super fast. It's a great way to get armies on the table really quick and get a neat, dirty look. I love this. We have a video up on our YouTube channel that takes it a step further and shows you how to do rusted metal by doing the rust colors on the model first and then dry brushing the metallic over the top. It has had probably the most comments of anything I've ever done, other than underpainting flesh. Those probably are right neck and neck, and they're both underpainting, which is crazy. But underpainting metallics like that gets me so many comments on people saying how it changed the way their metallics looked because they start experimenting with other colors. They start experimenting with like purple and then dry brushing the metal over, and you get this cool purplish shadow glow on it, so that it's really quick, but you can play around, and I love seeing that. So true metallic works really, really well for that. And like I said, go watch the video. I think we show the troll. The Lord of the Rings troll armor.
Oh, yeah. Oh, let me go grab that.
And that one, really if you can go grab that model. Yeah. With the blue skin. Yep. Monument Hobbies, Patriots, yeah. When Chris gets back, he'll do the YouTube link. you try to send the virus to your daughter, but she simply does not have the time between school, homework, and. Yeah, I know, right? Time in life, dang it. Yeah. So I don't remember if it's this exact model, but this is the method that we use. It may be that we did it on the Adeptus Titanicus models on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
We've done so many over the years where I show this.
I watched you paint this one when we went to Valhalla.
Yeah.
This one, for me too, chat, like that video too, that one really changed my perspective on, I don't know how to describe it, but that was a light bulb moment for me of like, oh, all these colors look weird, just like the face one.
Until they don't.
And it's like, oh my gosh.
Trust the process.
Undertones is the way that just changed my whole way I look at painting now.
This model is super ugly, all done in black primer, and then I stippled it with a big dry brush, right? So I took one of our DD3s, I only have a DD2, but one of our DD big dome dry brushes, and I put, the first thing I put on it was burnt sienna, and I just went burp, 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 and so it had all these blotches of burnt sienna. Then I took yellow ochre and blah, 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 blah. So now it's got, I put burnt orange and then yellow ochre. So it's burnt sienna, burnt orange, yellow ochre. So it looked totally clown suit. It was rust colors at amplified space age kind of anime levels. It's just bright oranges and yellows stippled all over it. And then I took dark silver and dry brushed it over the top of that. That's all I did. Dark silver, dry brushed over the top. Immediate, all those colors turn into rust underneath the layer of metal. Now, that's not how rust works. Rust sits on the surface. So the only thing is if you're going for real hyper realism, this isn't going to look it. But assuming that you're wanting to get it done quick, this is awesome, right? I mean, it's just incredible. The amount of effort that you put into this versus the look is the best efficiency in painting right here. Because you will get a whole army done like this in, I don't know, an hour.
Yeah.
Depending on how many models you're doing.
I did all of my rusty metal on my Soulblight Gravelords.
Like next to nothing.
Quick.
Next to nothing.
I did the Stampa in a day.
Yeah.
If you guys know that model. And the
Stampa's huge freaking 40K model. So yeah. So that is my preference if you want to go quick. And it just works like a dream. So
could you show Tim that dwarf really quick?
Yeah.
He wanted to see it. And I think there's it's also a good example of some non-metallics. There you are, Tim. He was asking about that one. But you said you used potentially mahogany or burgundy.
I used mahogany, I think,
for this skin tone.
On him. Either that or like one of the burgundies, like dark burgundy or something.
Yeah.
There may be some dark purple in there.
Yeah, but the undertone stuff, it really, once you start trusting the process, you won't get away from it. I mean, I do that now with everything. No, I've just taken that rusted metal effect, right? And I did it on my Nurgle, where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do all of this, and I'm going to do a dry brush of green.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, that's, it just, yeah, it'll blow your mind.
Yeah, the verdigris one is really cool, right? When you can take like all of the turquoise and green oxide and do it, and then do gold or bronze over the top. The dark bronze and the verdigris, it works the same as the rust and gives you really cool. We even did a Space Marine where I did him in blues, dark blue, and sky blue, and then dry brushed the silver over the top, and it gave a really cool blue underglow on it. I think that video is up on YouTube as well. It just was fun. It was something where I was showing all the different ways you can treat color in that scenario to get some really interesting things going that you might not think about all the time. Tim, I never painted the hammer on him.
Oh yeah, Hoosier. I can post one of those. I should post my stuff in our Discord. I need to do that more
Everybody
often.
around here should. Lazy bastards. Everybody
just
around here paints so great and then doesn't ever share it.
Yeah. That's on me, chat. Yes, Hoosier, that's a good. That I will do that.
We need to have like a monument staff.
We do.
A gallery where we can show what everybody around here is working on, because we have some people that are brand new painters who are doing great things and having a lot of fun. Not everybody here comes from our world, and it's really, really fun to watch people grow into enjoying painting when they work here. A lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I didn't. I mean, I didn't even like painting at the beginning of my journey. I did everything to try to avoid painting, but now it's because I was just playing games at the beginning, but now it's the opposite for me. Ghost Hunter Monument Matt needs to show his painted models more.
Matt's
mention that. Yeah,
amazing. He
Matt does a
paints
great
at
job.
lunch every day. He is the most prolific painter in our entire crew, next to maybe Kyle. Kyle needs to show off stuff too. Kyle's a great painter, our GM. He is fantastic. You know, he doesn't like to think of it that way, but yeah, Kyle's a fantastic painter. We have a lot of really good painters here. People like you and Gabe are coming into your own. You're turning out really cool armies with really good, what I would call more beginner techniques that you've really learned and enhanced, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, I'm definitely when I look, you know, I love painting armies. I truly do. I think it's, even if I don't play anymore, as much as I used to, I just like having an army. It has a theme. Even like the list has a theme. I like building lists and painting the themed list more than I like playing the list sometimes.
Oh, 100%.
So I'll come up with, you know, I just tried OSL on my Nagash model, and I'm like, oh, I've never tried this. I'm just gonna wing it, and it came out great. But yeah, I'm all about that theme. Deadbeat artist. Wait, you can play games with these models?
No way, dude. Lies and heresy.
Yeah, I will. I'm saying it now, chat. I will commit to showing off my stuff more often. Yes, I do. Also, I do like just painting Nurgle. Now I'm wanting to go paint some Nurgle.
Nurgle's a lot of fun. We were talking about it yesterday when people were asking if I like sci-fi or fantasy, and I was like, my favorite sci-fi is probably Nurgle.
Yeah, I just love Nurgle theme stuff. They're just so silly.
Yeah, well, and it just has a better amalgam of material because of all of the crazy garbage guts hanging out.
And I feel like if you mess up on Nurgle, it's even better because it's just like
total happy mistakes.
Yeah. Yes, I at some point Smaug is on my list. My next one is now that I finished my Soul Blight, I am redoing my Gargants, but actually doing them. It's more of a mission from God now that I need to adjust my, because that's like when I first started, and now I'm here. I'm like, there's, you know, I would love these even better now. So that is what I'm doing. Chris, I'm the opposite. I grew to hate army painting. This is why I paint mostly display at MCP now. I paint my armies relatively quick now because once I get into the theme and something clicks, then I'm like, ooh, I gotta just do it.
Oh yeah, definitely. So here we have the Crux Terminatus on the shoulder plate is kind of in the dark side of the shoulder plate. So I'm really just extreme highlighting that top edge, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Right? Let everything else fall into darkness. I might pick up a couple of little edge doots on the bottom side here, like maybe a doot and a deet down low. Maybe one right there. And there. Right? Mm-hmm. That's it. I don't know that you need much more than that. That gives the shape to it. You can tell that the bottom half wraps around into shadow, right? Conforms to everything around it.
Yeah.
Right? We've got this little brightness here that might reflect off of these points, so I went ahead and did that here too. Right? Like they reflect and cast light over into this area maybe a little bit.
Suchi Bear, I just used my painted models for D&D. Got super self-conscious people were taking pictures.
That's awesome. But yeah, it can be a little daunting, right? Where you're like, why are they looking at my stuff? Like, it's because you did good, dude.
This is looking great. You guys are just tuning in. It's almost 4 o'clock. Wow.
That's crazy.
It is. We are not finishing up, but almost done with the non-metallic metal, it looks like here. Started this last Friday. Last week we did the black armor work up in the face and the hair.
Just a little bit of brightness along the top of that secondary reflection. We don't want to punch that too much. We give it just a little bit.
Nice. Zin, welcome in. Hoosier. I painted up a dwarf for D&D, and one of those guys in the group doesn't paint at all, and he was blown away. Well, that's cool. I was like, not sure what to even say. It's cool. It's like showing someone it's your art.
100%.
Has some vulnerability to it, but people will appreciate it in the way they appreciate it.
But understand, too, if you choose to keep your art private, that's just as great.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever feel like you got to be part of the show-off crowd if you don't feel like it's good. You know, I know a lot of people that it prevents them from feeling comfortable with their art in miniature because they're like, I don't want to have to show it on Instagram.
Yeah.
Don't.
That's a great point.
Who cares? I would love to see it, but don't let that pressure you. Sometimes it's just as well that you spent all that time doing it and never showed it to anybody because you were the only one it mattered. You're the only one you're doing it for, and that's A-OK.
Yep.
Don't even sweat it.
Then I just wanted to say I got my first couple sets of Pro Acryl. I'm really excited to try it out. Awesome.
Thank you.
Welcome to the family. You won't be disappointed. Smelly Fella's asking, do you have a particular miniature sculptor you really like?
Oh, no.
The cool ones?
The cool ones, yeah. There's so many great sculptors out there. I don't fanboy a lot with regards to that because there are so many, and I would feel bad. We work with William Tsang on our texture trainers, and he does a phenomenal job. He always pulls through for me, making my crazy ideas come to life. Right? So obviously, I'm partial to people that I work with. We've worked with other great sculptors in the past, so you know that makes that easy, low-hanging fruit to say them. But no, I don't really have them. I mean, obviously the everybody knows them, right? The Contreras and Palacios and things like that. They're all great artists doing great things. So I'd be remiss to not, mention that I love their work, but I don't really care. So many great models out there.
Yeah, there are a lot of great models. A lot of cool STLs, a lot of cool models.
Well, and digital sculpting has brought a whole world of inventiveness from people who weren't in our industry to begin with. Video game development artists, people that just now have been able to go off and, learn all of the tools for 3D sculpting and, are making amazing things where they would never have been able to share their creativity with us had they had to hand sculpt that stuff.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I feel like the 3D printing world has definitely bolstered a lot of these sculptors now into our space of
100%.
hobby, which is super cool.
Well, and seeing the look on their face when they see their work in
on
like
a table
real
or
3-dimensional, cool, hold it in their hands stuff when
D&D.
It's always been for video games where it was a cool model and it played well in Diablo or whatever, but holy hell, I can hold it in my hand now? That's awesome.
Tech Elf. My first 2 years of painting, I didn't show anyone anything I painted, and it wasn't until I crossed you guys that I started sharing my painting and how far it's come, and I thank you. Oh, absolutely.
Thank you for sharing with us, because that's awesome.
Yeah, Lumberjack. River so much, yep. It's all hand sculpted.
How about them apples?
That's looking great. It looks like non-metallic gold to me.
I like it. Notice how it really did make our black armor darker. Someone was asking about non-metallic steel. Technically, this could be a very dark steel as well. Just a way to do it that, we're calling this black armor. I'm leaving a lot of the blue. It's all painted with Payne's Gray, which is a blue, technically, and white blue with a little bit of black wash gone back over it at the end to darken it up. and of course the purple underneath to give it a little bit more interest in the shadows. But
So Jason,
sir, yes, sir.
give me a recap on this gold work up here. A quick recap on it from start to finish.
Oh boy. Yeah. So in order to get here, we went through. You want to back me out one level? I'll show the colors even. We've been working on this non-metallic gold, and we started the journey with dark yellow green as a base. I like to use greens as a base for gold because it gives me kind of a weird cool temperature base, even though green is can play between cool and warm. It cools the gold yellowishness off, and also gives me kind of a cool tarnished look. Think like mossy. It's not wet and mossy, but it gives a neat tarnish to gold, even though gold tends to tarnish black and brown, not green. And then we worked in some dark purple in the shadows. My fixation with purple is true even with non-metallic gold. That gives me some nice, deep, reflective shadows that can be bring interest through the color of purple, but also bring the environment in. You can imagine like alien worlds would have different shadow colors cast, and so I like purple for that. And then after that, we went into orange oxide. Right next. The orange oxide gave us a nice warmth and depth for the gold that, again, brings more environment into it. And then the orange brown over the top of that was kind of the underpainting, if you will, for setting up the colors that would give me the nuanced shadows and midtones for all of the gold. If you want to punch in, we'll let them see how all of that plays. You can see the orange oxide in the shadow, the little bit of the purple, the greens playing there. So like I said, it just gives it the feeling that it's in a living world, as opposed to just being, a dark brown, a mid brown, a bright, yellow kind of a thing, where all of the colors are gold, but it forgets that the reflective metals will bring the colors from their environment in, even if they're not highly polished. You'll still have the reflected shadows and stuff from the world around you that play in here. So those colors come to life that way. After those, then it was just two other colors. It was bright yellow ochre. That gives the color of gold, the kind of yellowishness that I wanted, without it feeling like, 24 karat gold plated, cheap, dollar store jewelry. So I love a yellow that's a little bit muted. So the bright yellow ochre is a great way to do that. It's also a very big jump from the orange brown. So in value, we call it, the brightness difference between those two allows us to start moving into the reflective shine of metal. If you go into a stage in between this, it starts looking like it's just painted this color. You lose the reflectiveness of a surface like metal. See, this is where I start making my jump to brighter colors, is from that mid-tone orange brown to a brighter highlight of yellow ochre. And then eventually the same thing, we go to the bright pale yellow, which is the brightest reflection. This is indicative of the lighting color that's reflecting, so the sun, the light in the room, whatever it is. And again, that's a big jump from even our bright yellow ochre. So at those highlight steps is where you're going to have to assert your bravery and really start making jumps from darker colors to brighter colors without worrying about blending in between. And that's what gives people a lot of the headache in non-metallic, is that it won't read as a metal unless you have that disparity between bright and dark. You can even see it on the black armor, right? You can see that I've just got nice narrow shine lines that let you know it's a hard surface with some reflective quality to it, but not polished. It's dirty, worn, beaten. It doesn't have a big exposed bright area to it. Just nice little pinpoint shine that shows me that there is light on it. It does reflect the light back, but it's been worn. It's been in combat and seen its days. Whereas the gold is a little bit more polished, a little bit more royalty associated with it. So it gives me a nice offset between the two types of metals.
That was great. Wheeler's Minis, first time chat, and you subbed earlier. Thank you again for that. I don't know if this has been asked, but I was wondering, where'd you learn to paint non-metallic metal? Was it something you just picked up, or did someone teach you?
Boy, it was a trial and error process of looking at photos in various locations that I was seeing that were back in the day were catalogs. And the way that classic artists would paint stuff like gold. The green in my gold comes from looking at paintings in like the Louvre. right? And like classical renditions of gold that have green as the base for them, because green was kind of where that green ochre was, where your yellow ochre and your yellows came from. It was a family of pigments that people would use to create and build their yellows on before there were a ton of pigments. And so you get some really neat paintings that are done that way. So I just adopted that early on. And then watching other people, I've never been taught. I never took art classes that I passed. Believe it or not, the 2 art classes that I've taken, I'm 54 years old, coming up on 55, and the 2 art classes that I took, I failed. Well, I got an incomplete in college. I just stopped going because I hated the instructor. And my high school one, I just was not, I didn't get along with the fact that, hey, you're supposed to draw a horse like this with some circles and this. I was like, no, you draw a horse like this, and I draw a horse. So I was already had been drawing and doing these things and kind of finding my own way. And so I was very irreverent in class. So it didn't work for me. So I just go out in the world and see things. And I'm a weird mix of analytical brain that wants to know why and how things work, and creative space case that just wants to go do it, and doesn't give a damn. I'll do it my own way. But I want to know the rules well enough so that when I break them, people still get it. Because I learned early on that I would show people pictures and they wouldn't know what I was showing them. And as a kid, it would frustrate you. It's like, no, that's Spider-Man, and he's shooting a web, and he's got the bad guy in it, and he's on a wall. But people couldn't understand it because I had no understanding of depth perception and how to keep the building looking like it was a build. You didn't know that stuff. I didn't know how to shadow and line weight and all the mechanics of it. It was funny because I showed my portfolio in the comics industry to some dudes that were willing to give me a look at a comic convention when I was like 14 years old. And God bless those guys. They didn't just beat me up too bad because it was horrible. Like, my portfolio was horrible. I drew some pictures and it literally was like, it was like trying to, just short of tracing it out of a comic book, I just took somebody else's pose and tried to recreate it on my own, and it was horrible. But they gave me a bunch of really good feedback on line weight and made me go look at it, and I didn't have the internet to go look it up, so I just had to go figure it out. So just figure it out. So non-metallic, same thing. It's just figuring it out, understanding the world around you and looking at how light plays. It's again why we come back and say paint with light, not with color, because the world around you is built on light. If you turn the lights off, there is no color, right? So in order to get color, you have to put the light where it's supposed to go to make it look the way you want it to look. And so that's just kind of the way my analytical brain wrapped around it. And then just years and years of doing it and failing and trying something new and having it look like crap and painting it over. So yeah. Nowadays, I'm jealous because you guys have so many great remedies for that. You can go out and Google images, steel sphere, and you'll get, or steel ball bearing, and you will get a sphere that's a steel sphere from some ball bearing company's marketing literature that shows this amazing light. Maybe it's 3D rendered, maybe it's a picture of a steel bearing in a perfectly backlit thing that shows you this amazing reflection of light on a steel ball bearing. I'm out digging in my dad's crappy tools to try to pick things up and set them out in the sun and see, what does this look like, and then try to recreate that. Now you can just go on the internet and get it. So there's a tremendous amount of tools. I think it's just utilizing them the right way. A lot of times we fail to recognize the fact that you want to study the overall perspective of light on reflective surfaces, light on metal, and not what does a sword look like. Because you'll fall victim to I know how to paint a sword now, but I have no idea how to paint non-metallic metal. I can do every sword really, really well, but that's because you've learned the shape and the place to put the paint on that shape, but you haven't learned light on shapes, plural. And so I would say your best bet is to start looking at all the different things. How does a cylinder, we talk about those primary geometric shapes. You get a cone, a cylinder, a pyramid, a cube with all of its flat surfaces, all of the things that you can find and look at them. Just say metal and then that shape, and you'll see it. And now look at that and then start looking at the model. Can you go back to the model real quick? Mm-hmm. Then start looking at the model, because everything in life is made up of those geometric shapes in small clusters glued together, make a thing, right? The hand is a bunch of cylinders glued together. They have spheres at the point of contact that become a knuckle, right? So if I have a metal finger and it's bent, I now have to paint 3 cylinders and 2 spheres in order to paint a hooked finger, right? So the light, I already know. Google tells me how to paint spheres and cylinders. I just have to, in my head, equate to where those are on the thing I'm painting. You know, this complex design of the lion is just a bunch of spheres and cylinder shapes and planes wrapped in together in weird shapes. So I'm painting each one of these as the shape it is and then tuning it back to the overall picture. You saw me earlier, once we painted the gorgette and I had this brightness on here, I had to go back and retune the shoulder plate to make it brighter in the same area so that this brightness on the gorgette made sense. And so I went back and retuned all of these surfaces. And it brought the whole composition together. So I have to look at the individual shapes and paint them the way they would reflect light, and then look at the bigger picture of the whole model and see how it would reflect light as a total object, and then fine tune it. So I probably make it seem abusively complicated. Once you start thinking that way, you'll be amazed at how easy it just starts rolling off the brush. You just start doing it, right? Earlier we had the conversation about lighting from 10 and 2. Mm-hmm. You know, the easiest way to pick is I either want my light coming from over here, or I want my light coming from over here when I'm painting models. One or the other is the way you want to take your whole global thought of painting models is 10 and 2 to start. Then as you start really feeling like you got that, you've nailed it, then you can get complicated. Then you can do light from directly at side facing, underneath, because you'll start to have your brain wrapped around how light plays on surfaces, no matter which direction it comes from. Yeah, reference material, Wheelers, awesome. Yeah, doing your best and learning from mistakes is man. And yeah. And the nice thing is you have so many avenues. Come watch us paint. Myriads of other people painting and watching them do it. Paying attention to things like the brush stroke, paying attention to how they build it up. A lot of times it can be with non-metallics, especially in the reflective surface painting, we call it, is looking at how a person like me will start with a dark color and then put highlights on it and then blend them in. Or somebody will start with a dark color, mid-tone highlights, you know, and then ultra high reflections. That's the way we did this. And seeing which of those jives with you, you know. Watching Flame On, Mashik, paint his non-metallic metal, totally different process and technique for me, and gets a totally different look at the end of it. Same function, right? Same end goal. His technique will look and feel different, but it will, if we both painted the same model with the same light source, at the end you'd both recognize both of them. It would just be two different sets of how the metal looked, right? Because of our process of getting there. And so don't feel like you have to be wrapped into any one that you see and that's the only way to do it. Go and keep looking out there. And if you don't even look at other people's method of painting, you just look and use those photos and those images and just start trying to recreate them, you'll find your own method to do it. You'll find whatever works for you. And that, you know, art is chaos. Just whatever gets you to the end, the finish line, and you feel great about it, that's the way. Video that broke down how light hits different surfaces. Yep. The studio is also lit at 10 and 2. It really is. It's 10 and 2.
It's a very common practice of video.
Now it's lit at 10 and 2 because that obliviates shadows. It gets rid of all of the shadow, right? So that like when I set my model down, the shadow is pretty fine tuned on there. I don't get too drastic of a darkness anywhere else.
Yep.
Right. So the studio is lit like that, but the models we paint want to be lit one or the other because you want that drastic shadow to give you the contrast that makes it visually interesting.
Yep.
I'm already amazingly visually interesting, so the lighting doesn't matter.
I know the lighting in here came out good. I like it.
It's almost like we have somebody that knows what they're doing.
Kind of.
He's searching for kudos, chat.
No, I'm not.
Some hearts in chat for the illustrious Christmas sushi behind the scenes. He's a spotlight stealer, this one.
I'm trying.
People like the 10 and 2 look at photos of watches. Oh, yeah. 10 and 2. Isn't that funny? Yeah. I just read an article about how AI cannot make a watch that shows you something like a 915.
Really?
Because all of the watch photos that it's stealing its learning from are at 10 and 2 because that's what the industry has determined is visually appealing for watch hands when in a photo. So AI doesn't know anything about how hands really look at specific times because there's nothing to draw from.
I'll have to tell Ryan that. He's super.
They're having to actually teach the AI engines what all of the other spots on the watch look like because you'll ask for any time and it'll give you 10 after 10.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
That's funny.
I hope, Cordial, that you do that to mess up AI. That'd be awesome. Wheeler says that you also live in a dry-ass state. We live in Arizona.
Yep.
Welcome. How do you keep your painting area well humidified? We don't.
We
do nothing.
We submit to the beast.
We submit to the beast, and we paint on paper. Shoot the palette over here. Palette paper. Ta-da! The miracle of palette. And there's my palette glass. Yeah, we don't show that. Although the paper's not much better anymore. We should be like, I use palette paper. It's amazingly clean and easy. This is it. This is how we painted this whole model is using the palette paper. I like dry palette. Even though in a dry climate, I've painted in Colorado before this, Arizona, really dry climates. I've lived in California, New York, grew up in Texas, very humid. And in all cases, I find that if I use a dry palette, my paint acts more the same no matter where I'm at in the world. More humid climates, I might get more workable time out of the paint, but it's still going to dry out on the palette. So dry palette is my preference. Whereas a wet palette in our dry climate here dries out almost instantaneously. You keep it wet and it starts curling up at the corners. You're fighting the paper. The paint's going all over the place. So yeah, I don't use them. But we don't moisturize. You don't humidify the air or anything. I would suggest not. Just use less paint on the palette each time, so you don't feel like you're wasting it. Sometimes it will dry up after time, and you will be wasting some paint. So just use smaller amounts of paint. That way you're more prone to use it all up before it is wasted. And use Peracryl, because Peracryl has a longer open time and won't dry as fast. Ta-da! Now I know how to test if strangers are actually the Terminator. Draw me a watch that is at 762. It'll be 1010, guaranteed. Yeah, Colorado is a different beast comparatively since you used to live in Florida. Totally different. Same thing, growing up in Texas, I've painted in Florida, been all over the world painting, and humid areas for me, humid areas we notice, like if Jen and I have traveled and painted in humid areas, it's like you notice, like it's different, right? My paint is workable longer. I got to wait longer between layers if I'm glazing fast and using very thin paint. So yeah, you got to treat your paint to the environment that you're living in for sure. What is that brand of palette paper? It's called Gray Matters. I don't remember who the manufacturer is, but it's called Gray Matters. Soho or something like that. I don't know. Gray palette paper. Just Amazon gray palette paper. You'll find it. We buy them in maybe 9 or 8 by 11, like standard notebook size, and then also in 12 by 17. 12 by 17 for here in the studio, and the smaller one for travel.
Yeah, take a picture of that glass palette.
Yes, because we need it on a mouse pad.
Mouse pad.
Are Peracryl Rotocans available in Canada? Not yet. It's not shipping issue. Well, there is. We have to handle it different cross-border to our distributor. We have a Canadian distributor, so we don't ship to customers in Canada very often. We try to get you to purchase from Canadian retailers because the shipping is better for you there. And our Canadian distributor just has to make sure that they have all of their stuff in order to be able to store hazmat in their warehouse. So we're very close on all that. We hope in the next couple of weeks to have a solution, and then we'll be shipping up there. We have all the product in-house here to get to them, so it should be in the next coming month or so. You should have availability in Canada at the stores that carry Monument. Something tariffs. Well, that's also coming, so who knows? But that's from you to us, not from us. Well, I mean, it might be from you to, or from us to you if Canada reciprocates. We'll see. Oh, the joys of tariff wars. Everybody, you'll see Chris is putting all of the links in chat. Notice I didn't say he was throwing up in chat today.
I am gently placing
the links in our illustrious chat. We would like to say thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. We'd like to say thank you to all of you for joining us again on a wonderful Wednesday. We stream Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time here out of our HQ in Phoenix, Arizona, the driest of the dry. And we'd love to see you back. So if you're new around here, hit that follow button, get updates both on YouTube and Twitch for when we go live. We'd love to see you hanging out with us. Hopefully you get to learn a lot, ask some good questions, get some good answers. Make sure to join the Discord. As Ghost Hunter has pointed out, 5,308 amazing artists in the Discord and one person who needs to dig a bear out of a pile of plastic. Yes, you do. Yes, right. You do. No fear. Yeah. And then check out the Monument Hobbies link and the FLGS link that Chris put up there, because that will be your path to finding our wonderful products at monumenthobbies.com and also through your local retailer. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dealers worldwide that carry our products. Please support them and all the work they do to keep the hobby alive in your locale. And then, of course, the Discord, like we mentioned. You can catch all of the VODs for the shows after the fact. If you showed up here late, want to see how we did the non-metallic gold, should punch back to the model. We were painting some gold shoulder plates on Antonio El Tigre today, the legally distinct Primarch of the First Legion. So you can catch up on the VODs by going over to our YouTube channel under the live tab all of the time. Thank you so much. We'll be back again tomorrow. I will be here tomorrow, but gone on Friday. You'll have Jordan, the illustrious Baby J, here on Friday with Chris. I will be at Las Vegas Open in, Las Vegas, hanging out with all the nerds there. So if you're going to LVO, you can stop by the booth, come and hang out and say hi. But stick around. We're going to find some more great hobby goodness being streamed by somebody else, some other wonderful person. So drop some love in their channel, hit the follow button, and we will see you back here tomorrow. Adios, gang.